All right, if you are looking at improving your fitness, you need to know today's guest. Not only is he an incredible athlete, but he transfers all of that passion to helping people reach their fitness goals, whether that's competing at a high level, just moving better, and everything in between. Today, we're looking at Vancouver through the eyes of Kyle Vis, personal trainer, CrossFit coach, and Hyrox coach. If this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is about real estate and living in Vancouver, subscribe below. Welcome to my weekly series, Vancouver Through My Eyes, where I interview a local Vancouverite and we talk about what it's like to live, work, and invest and play in Vancouver. Tap the bell for notifications to be the first to hear insight from our latest guests and keep current on all things Vancouver real estate. My name is Megan Becker, local realtor. I'm passionate about our city and helping people make moves within it. So if you're looking at making moves, give me a call, text, or email, and I'm excited to help you make moves in the best city in Canada. Kyle, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you. That was the nicest intro I've had in a really long time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's all true. That was one of the first things I noticed about you, just incredible athlete. And, like any good coach, you transfer that into the work, which is the way it should be, right?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the how I got mostly into coaching. Was I was never the best athlete. I was never the most talented. I was never the most naturally gifted at any sport. I loved working hard. I loved sport. I loved competing individually and with others, but I was never, it was always a challenge to get on the field in some cases. And so I was always, trying to find that extra edge or trying to find how can I make myself better and so on and so forth. And by struggling, by learning that way, it ended up kind of empowering me to understand how to progress through things and how to improve. And then just being somebody who likes connecting, likes helping other people, being a communicator seemed to be a natural fit for coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. It's, commonly known, I think, some of the best coaches aren't always the best athletes because a lot of things don't come natural to you. So exactly like you said, you've had to figure out how to, work on it on a technique, which I think just makes you a better teacher, a better coach, which is cool.
Yeah. And vice versa. I think some of the best athletes in the world have kind of failed at coaching or haven't really been anything more than average or mediocre in some cases. You can point to a number of athletes, like not to call anybody out here, but Wayne Gretzky had a pretty average coaching record for the Coyotes.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan hasn't really been able to translate his on-court success to ownership of the Charlotte Hornets. So those are just two examples of two of the biggest names in their sports, obviously, of all time, and just hasn't really translated that well. So yeah, it's definitely something where being able to connect with people, being able to understand their struggles and how they might be going through things and having experience struggling through those progressions on my own has, yeah, I think given me a different perspective in a way that lets me connect with athletes in a different way.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. So let's start with, what brought you originally to Vancouver? Share a little bit about the path that led you to eventually living here.
Yeah, it's kind of unique. I was officially born here. I was born in Vancouver. I was born at VGH in the 80s, and when my parents split when I was pretty young, I moved out to Toronto with my dad, and so always sort of grew up in Toronto, but always had a place for Vancouver in my heart. His family was all from Port Alberni on Vancouver Island. My mom's family was out here. And so we would come back and visit 2 or 3 times a year. But I was living in Toronto, kind of growing up East Coast,
Right.
doing that all the way through high school, really, but would come back Christmas, summer holidays, Thanksgiving from time to time. And so Vancouver was kind of always a place that I knew and was somewhat familiar with, but never lived here. My education took me to the US, took me back to Ontario. I lived in Ottawa for 4 years. I then moved to Montreal to pursue a career in aerospace for 10 years. And finally, in the middle of the pandemic, this would have been the holiday season of 2020. I was out here every year as I would come out and visit family and visit friends. And one of my friends that I grew up with in Toronto, went to high school with him. I was hanging out with him and his children, and we were sitting around, and I was reaching the end of my career in aerospace and was kind of trying to figure out, next steps, how we all do that soul searching and try to find, what's next and what's coming. And my friend just very casually, very generously, but honestly, if you ask him, probably with no real intention, just said, "Oh, well, we'd love to have you out here." As friends do, as friends like catching up and saying, "I wish we could spend more time together." And in
Mhm.
that moment, I had not considered that. Yeah, I can move to Vancouver. I can do this, and I can sort of realize this dream that I've always had of living here, even though my birth certificate says Vancouver, says British Columbia on it, and I've got friends and family out here, but I'd never lived out here. So that was, just before New Year's. 2 weeks later in January, I was out here sort of shopping around for apartments to rent. And by March 1st, I had packed up everything in Montreal and I'd moved out here in 2021. So I've been here a little over 3 years now, and I'm loving it. Yeah, I don't see myself going back east anytime soon.
Very cool. Crazy timing and what the pandemic led to. Hey, I think a lot of people made some changes in and around that time period.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it for me was, again, trying to always realize that dream. Like I have always wanted to be out here. I do know a lot of people, but it was certainly motivated a lot by a desire to be closer to the family that I do have remaining. So I've still got cousins and an uncle on Vancouver Island. My mom's family is out here, whom I've been able to reconnect with as well too. Just given proximity and being able to say, "Hey, yeah, I can come see you for your birthday. I can come hang out and have dinner on a Sunday night," and stuff like that. So being closer to family for sure was a big draw in coming out here. I knew the mountains were here. I grew up skiing and snowboarding. I knew the ocean is right here, and yeah, so that, like, those things were sort of known, but there's some really amazing things about Vancouver that I didn't even realize until I fully moved here, which is just another reason why I don't see myself leaving anytime soon.
So I'd love for you to elaborate on that. Obviously, everyone knows mountains, oceans, skiing, ocean, like all that stuff. But tell me
Mhm.
some of the things that have you hooked on why you want to stay here.
I think really there's a couple of things that I really do love about Vancouver, and I think that are truly unique. One is, yeah, the mountains and the ocean, but like it's all right here, like literally at your fingertips. I mean, you can go if you're over on the North Shore or in West Van, like you're literally at the base of a mountain.
Yeah.
Um, it's all so accessible. So um, mountains, obviously getting into the water, but like there are, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 beaches in Vancouver proper where in the summertime you can go to the beach with oceanfront and like enjoy that. You don't need to go
Yeah.
to some tropical destination to really enjoy the beach and the ocean. Golf courses, I'm a big golfer. I've golfed my whole life. You can golf all year round here. And with the number of municipal or publicly accessible courses that are here in Vancouver, there's probably 6, 8, 10 courses within a 20, 30-minute drive of my front door that I
Yeah.
can play all year round, that are less than $100 a round and are gorgeous, are stunning, like parks and places to be. So I think that there's obviously the access to mountains, ocean, beaches, golf, activities just everywhere, but it's also the proximity is just like it's so close
Yeah.
that I think that it's really an advantage over any other city that I've lived in, certainly where, if you wanted to play golf in Toronto, it's, maybe an hour and a half drive. It's going to take you your whole day. It's going to be a little more expensive. Um, and same thing with Montreal, so I think that that's one of the things that I would highlight in terms of huge advantage to being here in Vancouver.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And it is exactly like you said, the accessibility, the fact that even for me, I've got, somewhat of a flexible schedule, but it's unrealistic to take a day off or a half a day off sometimes. But you can have a free 2 hour block and grab a paddleboard and be on the water, or exactly that. That was one of the things for me, was just being able to golf all year round. And it was one of the things I was very surprised was actually more inexpensive than a lot of other places that I've been as well.
Yeah, and I think part of that is just due to the business model where, if you're in Alberta, if you're in Ontario and Quebec, you have to close your golf course for 3
More
to
towards
4 or
there.
5 months every year. Yeah, so the
Yeah,
revenue you're bringing in during that on season has to be higher, right? So like courses can afford to be a little bit cheaper across the board here because they can earn revenue in January, February, March, stuff like that. One of the other
exactly.
things that I'd kind of point to that I really love about Vancouver is Obviously there's natural beauty everywhere. We're on the water, but the geography of the city is so unique that I feel like it gives space and gives like the ability to kind of breathe and not feel overly congested all the time. So even if
Mhm.
you're in the downtown peninsula, you know, your steps from like Sunset Beach or the West End or Cole Harbor and a marina and Stanley Park, like all of those things really give you an opportunity to kind of escape that urban density, even though things are really quite dense. False Creek is another, amazing just opportunity to be living directly in the city. I live very close to City Hall, which is often at the core of any major metropolis. The seawall's right around the corner. You're walking around, you're seeing boats and marinas. You'll be out for a jog and pass sea lions and
Yeah.
natural ocean wildlife and stuff like that. So just that dichotomy of being very close to the center of the city, seeing the mountains every morning, that first October, November morning when you see the mountains kind of dusted with snow for the first time is really quite magical. But also still being, close to city services, access, events, nightlife, attractions, stuff like that is all right at your fingertips. So the proximity to everything really does feel like the biggest advantage here in Vancouver.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. So let's narrow things down a little bit. So, back in 2021, you moved here. You're like, okay, Vancouver is it. Tell me a little bit how you chose the area, the specific community that you're in, and why that community over any others.
Okay. So I've actually lived in two different places here in Vancouver since I returned in 2021. The first, which will certainly make sense to you, was I lived in Gastown on Alexander Street, mostly because it was steps from the CrossFit gym that you and I have met at and worked at together. So
Mhm.
knowing that was a community that I wanted to connect with, where they were probably going to be like-minded people. I was, going to prioritize my health and fitness. It was a place that maybe I eventually wanted to work at as well too, and ultimately did. That's why I lived literally steps from the gym in
Mhm.
Gastown. So it was a tiny little 450 square foot apartment. It did not have air conditioning. This was the summer of the heat dome.
Oh
And
gosh.
yeah, so very quickly recognized one that the noise in the area was relatively significant. I had an amazing view of the north. I had an unobstructed view of the North Shore,
Yeah.
including like the sea bus and the port, and it was amazing. But like overlooking Crab Park and overlooking the helipad and all the traffic that would run under the convention center and stuff, and the trains that would pass behind the place
Mhm.
just at all hours of the night became too much. And so I very quickly started a search for a new location where the only filter that I had was it needs to have air conditioning. And funny enough, the place that I ended up in, which is in Fairview, so I'm very close to Canby Broadway, um, actually didn't have air conditioning in it, but the place was so perfect that I made sure that I could install it afterwards and stuff like that. So
Nice.
I prioritized community connection. Again, being not completely new in the city, but wanting to make my own new connections. Having moved here, I knew that staying close and in close proximity to that gym would be the best way to do that. So I prioritized living there. Gastown's fun too. There was a lot of nightlife and activity. It felt like an authentic Vancouver experience. Being close to the city center, the core, the historical center of the city as well. And then when I found my new place again in Fairview, over on the other side of False Creek, Fairview itself isn't, I would say, the most active or the hottest neighborhood to necessarily be in, but it is certainly central to everything. And that was
Yeah.
kind of what I was looking for. So when I mentioned the noise and the air conditioning and that stuff, I was looking for more of like a place of refuge and some solitude where I could still be very close to everything if I wanted it to be. And that's
Yeah.
how I feel about Fairview.
Yeah. I really like Fairview. I have a colleague that lives there and he said the exact same thing. He's like, I love downtown, but I didn't want the noise and I wanted something. He's in real estate, so he needs to have access to kind of the whole lower mainland. And he just says it's so easily accessible, it's quieter, but you're still super close to downtown, all of the nightlife and the stuff that he likes there. So maybe let's dive into a little bit on the business side. So, part of moving to a new city obviously is finding a place in the area that you want to live, but it's also comes with potentially finding new job opportunities. And so I'd love for you to expand on how you got started in the personal training space when you moving to a new city and everything.
Yeah, um I have been a personal trainer, coach, performance coach for over 10 years, but always in a part-time capacity. I had some really great opportunities in aerospace. I pursued those opportunities, built a great career. I when I moved out here, that career in aerospace had kind of ended. There's not a whole heck of a lot of aerospace here in Vancouver. There are a few satellite offices and there are a few businesses that do operate here, but nothing in the magnitude of the aerospace hub that exists in Montreal. So I knew that it was going to be an opportunity for a career shift. I did spend some time working at Lululemon. I was there for about a year and a half. I worked as essentially a project manager in the loyalty membership space, dealing basically with personal trainers and coaches and
Okay.
athletes. And so I was working with them to build connections between Lululemon and them. And ultimately, when that came to an end, I took a look at, what I really was passionate about, what I really wanted to do. I had some good stability in my life, both personally and financially, and I decided to finally take the plunge and go all in as a full-time strength and conditioning coach. And so that's what I've been doing now ever since.
That's awesome. Yeah, it is starting on your own as you know, a small business or contractor, it does take a little bit of that leap of going from, steady income to, okay, now I'm on my own. So I obviously you need to go get your own clients, business, like network, build your business that way. Tell me a little bit about how you started that, building that professional network here.
Yeah, and I, it's not something that I enjoy doing it. And in fact, that's one of the greatest benefits is like I love my job every day. I enjoy very much what I do. If I wasn't being paid for this, which I really wasn't doing it part time, it wasn't anything substantial. It was just something that I love to do. And so
Yeah.
being able to take that to a full-time job requires you to kind of take the hours you were putting into other things and devote it completely to this. So
Hmm.
in terms of networking and being a performance based coach, I think that there's a ton of opportunity here in Vancouver. Just given, again, we talked about all the activities that people are engaged in. I think that
Yeah.
there's a ton of interest and opportunity for people who want to race. They want to perform. They want to, circle a day on their calendar and say, in 6 months, I want to do this, or in 4 months, I want to do this. I think the other side of the folks that I would be working with most of the time are folks who are engaged in a ton of activities. And whether that's competing or not, I have folks that I work with who are saying, hey, I want to ski 30, 40, 50 days a year this season. I want to be able to go and play golf and walk and carry my bag. I don't want to have to use a power cart. I
Yeah.
want to go and kayak in the ocean. I want to sail. I want to swim. So we've got folks who are interested in competition, who are interested in improving their specific performance for a specific goal. And then I think we've got another group of folks that I'm working with who are interested in like maximizing their activities, maximizing their weekend, maximizing their longevity, playing with their kids, that type of stuff, but that
Yeah.
also need that general physical preparedness. So to connect with those folks, again, I mentioned that I had been coaching at CrossFit 604 for a period of time. Um, I've personally affiliated with Hyrox as well too as one of their performance coaches, and I think that that's a really unique and very applicable, broadly applicable methodology for getting folks ready either for a specific event or for providing them with some general physical preparedness in their life. So
Right.
between that coaching and that affiliation, yeah, just connecting with people, understanding what they're interested in. The fitness community in Vancouver's pretty small, pretty tight knit, but very supportive, and working with just different folks. You get to learn who's interested in what, and how you can help them out. And that's been my approach since doing this full time.
That's awesome. I'd love for you just tell everyone a little bit about Hyrox, because I was introduced to it through CrossFit 604, never heard of it before, and kind of went down that rabbit hole. And then you started coming in and being the official Hyrox coach, and I've learned a ton. I've spent my whole career life in the strength and conditioning, and I've learned a ton from you just on moving and pacing, and just understanding whether you're competing in Hyrox specifically, or exactly like you mentioned, using it to better other areas of your life. So maybe tell us a little bit about Hyrox specifically.
Yeah. So again, yeah, as you point out, Hyrox is, in my opinion, both a functional fitness event or race, as well as a training methodology.
Yeah.
And it's important to kind of make the distinction between two. In terms of the race itself, this is essentially where Hyrox started. The founders, one was a former field hockey Olympian. The other was an event, a mass participation event organizer. So mass participation events, think Vancouver Marathon, Grand Fondo, big triathlons, Ironman, stuff like that. Those are mass participation events. They were looking to combine those two things, and were looking to find a mass participation event where they could incorporate functional fitness as well. And so what they came up with was Hyrox, which is sort of an interesting, as the legend goes, or the myth goes, it's a combination of the word hybrid and rock star. So it's something we're still not necessarily sure on the origins of that, but that seems to be what's out there in the media, at least. Yeah. And so the race itself is a functional fitness event. Again, not mass start, but waves of people every 20 to 30, every 10 minutes, up to 20 to 50 people at a time on the course. And the event itself is 8 kilometers of running, which is divided into 1 kilometer segments. In between each kilometer, you then participate in a functional fitness event. You'll do a single movement for a period of time, a distance, and then you will come sort of back onto the track and complete another kilometer. So to give you an example, you'll start by running 1 kilometer, and then you sort of come to the station where you will use a ski erg machine, which is something that mimics having some ski poles in your hands and pressing down. You'll do that for 1,000 meters. You'll go and run another kilometer. You will then come in and you will push a heavy sled for 50 meters. And so on and so forth as you complete 8 kilometers of running and 8 stations. The event takes roughly 60 to 90 minutes and is truly accessible for anybody. There's no qualification times. There's no time cap. And the movements they've selected, in my opinion, are really quite smart and intentional, because they are all movements that you can essentially always do one more rep in each of them.
Yeah.
It's always something that, it might take you a longer time, but you can always push a sled a little bit further. You can always kind of do one more burpee. You can always do one more lunge in that respect. So it's a very inclusive event. There's a 99% completion percentage across every event they've done since 2017. So it's something where I think is a really accessible goal and a fun thing to train for. But the methodology itself, which requires, running, strength, some skill specific movements, which are also of benefit to your general life of picking up things and moving and stuff like that, makes me believe and believe fully in the Hyrox path, that it's something that is going to be quite popular and something that's people are going to find a ton of benefit and value from.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I've been doing CrossFit for a lot of years, and I like to think it is accessible to everyone. You can scale it, different movements, but I think Hyrox just opens that door even more for people that maybe are intimidated by CrossFit, but understand, kind of that hybrid type of, let's incorporate some running with a little bit of strength stuff and work on that endurance and everything all in one. So
yeah, I think that. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, that's one of the other things that I think, I've spent a ton of time in the functional fitness, the CrossFit space. The number of people that I've met who, are passionate about it, who want to work hard, who enjoy that type of challenging workout, but are intimidated by certain movements, was a significant percentage. I think that there's a number of people that you and I have probably both encountered in our CrossFit lives where, we'd encourage them to maybe get outside their comfort zone a little bit and do a competition or do something. But the element of being unknown and not predictable in terms of what was going to show up in that event would often prevent people from signing up and from taking
Yeah.
that leap. One of the things that we hear a lot about Hyrox is that it's the same race every time. And to me, that's a feature, not a bug. That's something where the predictability of what you're getting into means that it is potentially less intimidating to people. You know exactly what you need to train for. And just because you know what you're training for specifically doesn't mean that it's easy. Like, it's still a very challenging, event, challenging workout. But then also, it's quite easy to track your progress, let's say month over month, year over year, as you do multiple of these events. I could ask if, you've done, let's say a dozen, 15, 20 CrossFit competitions in your career, probably, but like being able to track your progress over those is kind of, a real crapshoot, because it's never been the same events. It's never the exact same loading. Even doing the CrossFit Open year over year, different workouts, different events. Sometimes they'll repeat some of those things, but with a Hyrox, again, because it's the exact same, you can definitely track your progress that way. So I understand kind of the critique of, well, it's the exact same thing, and how does that make it, how does that make it interesting? It's like, it makes it more accessible to people. I think it's less intimidating knowing what it's going to be, but then also it's much easier to track your progress month over month, year over year, to see how you're improving.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. I totally agree with that. So maybe a couple more things before we wrap up here, but we're on the topic of Hyrox and strength and conditioning and everything like that. Tell me a little bit about, or tell our viewers a little bit about, what's your ideal client, and what's the best way that people can reach out to you and potentially work together?
Yeah. I'm interested in working with, frankly, anybody that has some dedication, some discipline, some desire to improve. That's something that, whether you are training for something specifically or we can help you narrow down a goal of what you're looking to improve on, those are people that I'm interested in working with. A lot of the workouts and training and structure that I provide does require a decent amount of effort. You will be sweating, you'll probably be breathing heavy, but these are things that in life, to prepare yourself for other things, are kind of required, and are things that really prepare you for things outside of the gym as well too. So I'm looking for people who are, motivated, but maybe lacking some structure or some direction. I think that's what all good coaches sort of provide, is not the effort or, the necessarily the motivation, but it's really more like helping you get to where you want to go by providing a plan, by providing some accountability, some checking in. But then I love watching athletes who flourish when they finally, have somebody guiding them in the right direction. I think a lot of times when it comes to fitness and performance, people have great intentions. People want to do the right things. They want to get to where they want to go. They just don't really know how to necessarily do it. And I see my job as a coach really more as a facilitator of taking that energy, taking that motivation, taking that effort, and putting it into the right direction so they can get to where they want to go. So those are kind of the people that I love working with. But again, as I mentioned before, people who are training for something specific, awesome. People who are just looking to kind of get fit and be better in their general life, so they can ski more with their kids, or so that they can, push the stroller up a hike, or take the dog up on a hike, in Garibaldi, stuff like that. Those are people I'm looking to work with right now. Hyrox Kyle is my Instagram handle. That's the best way to reach out to me. HyroxKyle@gmail is also an email address where you can reach me. But yeah, those are kind of the best ways. And then, of course, coaching regularly at 604 Athletics. You can find me there through their website, and would love to have you come in and drop in and do a couple classes together and work together.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put all of those links in the description below, so you guys can reach out to Kyle. But last question I do want to ask you before we wrap up here, because we've talked about all these amazing things about Vancouver, why you fell in love with it here, why you want to make this your home. But I'd love for you to share for people, what are some things maybe to watch out for if someone's considering moving here, some kind of just like heads up, or things that you wish you would have known before you moved here?
Yeah. I think that something that may be different than other major cities that folks would encounter here is there's probably less of a little bit of a nightlife going on in Vancouver than in other cities. And I think that's just a function of the fact that people are getting up early on Saturday morning, Sunday morning, and like doing stuff, right? Like there are amazing, again, we've talked about amazing hikes and amazing trips and things that you can all do here. But the nightlife in Vancouver probably is a little bit quieter than other cities you're used to. I just came back from a weekend visiting friends in Montreal, and yeah, it's just a different energy here. So I would, maybe adjust your expectations if that's a big part of your life and a big part of your identity. There is certainly a scene, and you can have some fun, but it's going to be probably a little smaller, a little more scaled back than what you might be used to in a Toronto or Montreal. There's also this, stigma that Vancouverites aren't very friendly or they're not very outgoing. And I haven't found that to be true at all, to be honest. I think that if you are somebody yourself who puts yourself out there and joins, some activities or groups that you are interested in, you will be more than you'll easily find people to connect with and make those friendships and connections quite quickly here. It's kind of just a trope that you might hear that Vancouverites aren't very friendly or they're kind of flaky. And I don't believe that to be true at all. I've made some amazing connections, both with people who are transplanted here to Vancouver, but also Vancouver locals as well too. So watch out for that. Obviously, cost of living is expensive here, probably one of, if not the most expensive in Canada. So something to pay attention to is understanding what you can afford and what kind of space you can afford and stuff like that. But that's why they got you. That's why you're here. You're here to help them with all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just second your comment about, the whole Vancouverites aren't friendly, because I think a lot of people kind of have this assumption that making friends and meeting people should be like when we were in elementary school, and it's just easy. When you're in elementary school, nobody had anything else. And so everyone had this time, and making friends was so easy. But I think adults were busy. Everybody's got other things on the go. And so it just takes effort putting yourself out there. And I would totally agree with that statement. It's been so cool just connecting with different people. Different people will invite you to different opportunities. And it's been incredible, the different connections I've made in different groups here in Vancouver. So, but yeah, we'll wrap things up there. Kyle, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you guys all for watching. I love helping people make moves within our city, but my second favorite thing to do is connecting the incredible people within it. My goal with this series is to highlight what it's like to live, work, play, and invest in Vancouver and connect all the amazing people within it. So if you know anyone who shares a unique perspective on living in Vancouver, I'd be so grateful if you could connect me with them. All my info is in the description box below. And please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you all next week, where we'll be back with another